The Galactic Empire had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Every species knew this. Every planet accepted this. The people sat at the top and everyone else existed beneath them. This was the way of things. This was how it had always been. Commander stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the trade ships move through the system. This was a busy place. Thousands of vessels came and went every day, carrying goods and passengers across the empire. Had commanded this sector for 15 years. She knew every ship type, every flight pattern, every possible threat. So when something new appeared on her sensors, she noticed immediately. "What is that?" she asked, pointing at the strange reading. Her sensor officer leaned forward, confused. "Unknown vessel, Commander. It just dropped out of hyperspace. No identification codes, no registered flight path." Frowned. Pirates sometimes tried to sneak through her sector. They never succeeded. She had 300 warships under her command and she knew how to use them. "Send 3 cruisers to intercept," she ordered. "Tell them to identify themselves or be destroyed." 3 Imperial cruisers changed course and moved toward the unknown ship. They were fast, powerful, and deadly. Each one carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Against a single vessel, they were more than enough. The unknown ship did not respond to their messages. Watched her screen carefully. The ship was strange. It was smaller than her cruisers but built in a way she had never seen before. Its hull was dark gray, covered in strange angles and plates. It looked old and damaged, like it had traveled a very long way. "Still no response," her communications officer reported. "They are ignoring all channels." "Fire a warning shot," commanded. "Show them we are serious." The lead cruiser fired. A bright beam of plasma crossed the darkness of space and passed just in front of the unknown ship. What happened next changed everything. The unknown ship moved. It moved so fast that sensors lost track of it for a moment. 1 second it was in front of the cruisers. The next second it was between them, spinning and twisting like a dancer. Then it fired. 3 quick flashes of light, 3 perfect shots. Each cruiser shuddered as their engines died. Their weapons went dark. Their shields failed. In less than 5 seconds, 3 of the Empire's warships were floating helplessly in space. But they were not destroyed. Their crews were still alive. The unknown ship had disabled them without killing anyone. Felt her heart beating fast. This was impossible. Nothing moved that fast. Nothing was that accurate. She had spent her entire career studying warfare, and she had never seen anything like this. "Get me a visual," she demanded. The screen changed to show the unknown ship. Now could see it clearly. It was definitely damaged. Parts of its hull were burned and broken. It looked like it had survived a terrible battle or a long and dangerous journey. On its side she could see strange writing, letters she did not recognize, and beneath them a name in the common galactic language, probably added later so others could read it. "The Defiant." "Commander," her sensor officer said, his voice shaking. "I am reading life signs aboard that vessel. 200 beings, they are. They are not in our database. Unknown species." Unknown species. Those words sent a chill through his body. The Empire had every sentient species in the galaxy. They knew everyone. They controlled everyone. An unknown species was impossible. Unless the old stories were true. Had heard the legends. Everyone had. Stories about a species from a quarantined sector of space. A species that had been isolated and forgotten centuries ago. A species that was supposed to be extinct. "Humans." "The ship is moving toward the station," her officer reported. "It is not attacking. It appears to want to dock." Had to make a decision. She could order her entire fleet to open fire. She could destroy this strange ship and pretend it never existed. That would be the safe choice. That would be what her superiors expected. But those 3 cruisers were still floating in space, their crews alive and confused. Whatever these strangers were, they had chosen not to kill. That meant something. "All ships stand down," ordered. "Do not fire unless fired upon. I want a diplomatic team ready at Docking Bay 7. Her officers looked at her with surprise. One of them started to protest, but raised her hand. "That ship just defeated 3 cruisers without breaking a sweat," she said quietly. "And it did so without killing anyone. I want to know why. I want to know who they are. And I want to know what they want." Far across the sector, aboard the Defiant, Captain let out a long breath. He was a tall man, thin from months of limited food, with tired eyes that had seen too much. Behind him, his bridge crew sat at their stations, equally exhausted. They had been running for 18 months. 18 months since their home was destroyed. 18 months of jumping from system to system, always searching for safety. "They are standing down," Lieutenant reported from her tactical station. She was younger than, with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had disabled those 3 cruisers herself, using skills she had learned in 100 desperate battles. "No more weapons pointed at us." "Good," said. "That is good." Doctor, the ship's elderly doctor, walked onto the bridge. He moved slowly, his old bones tired from the long journey. "Are we safe, Captain?" Looked at the space station growing larger on his screen. He looked at the hundreds of alien warships surrounding them. He thought about the 200 humans aboard his ship, the last survivors of Earth's final colony. "I do not know," he admitted. "But we have no choice. We need food, we need medicine, we need a place to rest." He stood up straight and adjusted his worn uniform. "We came here to find a new home," he continued. "These aliens do not know us. They do not know what we have survived. They do not know what we are capable of." He paused and looked at his crew. "But they will learn. One way or another, they will learn." The Defiant moved slowly toward the station, and the entire Galactic Empire watched in confusion and fear. For the first time in 12,000 years, they faced something they did not understand. And that terrified them more than anything else could. The diplomatic chamber of station was built to impress visitors. High ceilings covered in gold. Walls decorated with the symbols of 1,000 conquered worlds. A long table made from rare crystal, surrounded by chairs designed for beings of many different shapes and sizes. Captain walked into this room and felt nothing. He had seen impressive things before. He had watched his burn. After that, gold ceilings meant very little. Lieutenant walked beside him, her eyes constantly moving, watching for threats. She did not trust these aliens. She did not trust anyone except her captain and her crew. On the other side of the table sat Commander and 5 Imperial diplomats. They wore fine robes and expensive jewelry. They looked at the 2 humans like scientists examining strange insects. "Please sit," said, gesturing to the chairs. Sat remained standing behind him, her hands loose at her sides. One of the diplomats, a tall alien with blue skin and too many eyes, spoke first. "You have entered Imperial space without permission. You have attacked Imperial vessels. You have refused to identify yourselves. These are serious crimes." "We did not attack anyone," replied calmly. "We defended ourselves when your ships fired at us. We disabled them without causing any deaths. That was a choice." "A choice?" The diplomat seemed confused by this word. "Yes, we could have destroyed those cruisers in seconds. We chose not to. We are not here for war." The diplomats whispered among themselves. Commander watched carefully. She was trying to understand him, trying to figure out what kind of being he was. "What are you?" she finally asked. "Our records show no species matching your biology." Took a deep breath. "We are human. Ours was a planet called Earth, in a sector you quarantined 300 years ago." The room went silent. Eyes widened. The diplomats stopped whispering. "That sector was sealed because of a dangerous plague," the blue diplomat said slowly. "Every species there died. We confirmed this." "Your confirmation was wrong," said. "Humans survived. We built underground cities. We developed cures. We continued living, alone and forgotten, for 3 centuries. He leaned forward slightly. We did not have your resources. We did not have your technology. We had nothing but our own minds and our own hands, and we survived anyway. Impossible, another diplomat muttered. I am sitting in front of you, said. Is that not proof enough? Commander raised her hand to quiet the diplomats. If what you say is true, why are you here now? Why leave your sector after all this time? Pain flickered across face. It was brief, but noticed it. A rogue black hole entered our system, he explained. It destabilized our sun. Our planet became unlivable. We had months to prepare, and we used every second. We built ships. We gathered survivors, and we ran. He paused, his voice becoming heavier. The Defiant is the only ship that made it through the journey. 200 people. That is all that remains of humanity. The weight of his words filled the room. Even the diplomats, who were trained to show no emotion, seemed affected. We are not asking for much, continued. We want safe passage through your space. We want to find a world where we can rebuild. We want to live in peace. The blue diplomat recovered first. You cannot simply ask the Empire for things. That is not how this works. Species submit to imperial rule or they are conquered. There is no third option. Then create one, said simply. The diplomat's many eyes blinked in confusion. What? You have ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. Surely you have the power to make exceptions. Surely you can choose mercy when it costs you nothing. Before anyone could respond, a door opened and Imperial soldiers marched into the room. 20 of them, armed with plasma rifles, spreading out to surround the humans. By order of High-End, the lead soldier announced, you are under arrest. Your ship will be seized. Your crew will be taken into custody for questioning. Did not move. He looked at Commander. Is this your decision? Shook her head slightly. She had not ordered this. She looked angry, but she did not countermand the soldiers. She was outranked. I see, said softly. The lead soldier stepped forward and reached for shoulder. Moved. It happened so fast that most people in the room did not see it clearly. One moment she was standing still. The next moment, 6 soldiers were on the ground, their weapons scattered across the floor. Stood among them, breathing calmly, without a scratch on her body. She had not killed anyone. She had not even drawn blood. But every soldier in the room now understood that they were alive only because she allowed it. The remaining soldiers pointed their weapons at her. Their hands were shaking. We came in peace, said, her voice cold and steady. Do not make us change our minds. Stood slowly. I apologize for the disturbance, Commander. We will return to our ship now. I suggest you discuss things with your superiors before taking any further action. He walked toward the door, followed, walking backward, keeping her eyes on the soldiers. No one tried to stop them. When they were gone, Commander sat in silence for a long moment. The diplomats were talking frantically, demanding action, demanding punishment. She ignored them. She was thinking about what she had just witnessed. A single human woman had defeated 6 trained Imperial soldiers without breaking a sweat. Their ship had disabled 3 cruisers without taking serious damage, and their captain had sat in a room full of enemies and spoken with perfect calm. What were these creatures? That night, the Imperial Council held an emergency meeting. High-End demanded immediate military action. He called the humans a threat to galactic security. He spoke of the danger of allowing unknown species to roam freely. The Council agreed with him. The next morning, 500 warships of the Second Grand Fleet began moving toward the system. Admiral, the Empire's greatest military commander, led them personally. Their orders were simple: destroy the human ship and eliminate the threat. Aboard the Defiant, Captain received word of the approaching fleet. He gathered his crew and told them the truth. 500 warships were coming to kill them. They had no allies, no reinforcements, no escape route. "We have survived everything the universe has thrown at us," he said, looking at the tired faces of his people. "We survived the plague. We survived the black hole. We survived 18 months of running through unknown space. We will survive this too." He did not know if he was telling the truth, but he knew that humans did not give up. They never had. They never would. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Admiral had never lost a battle. In 200 years of military service, she had crushed rebellions on 100 worlds. She had destroyed pirate fleets with ease. She had brought entire species to their knees with nothing but her strategic brilliance and the overwhelming power of the Imperial Navy. Now she stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Dominion, watching 500 warships move into attack formation. Each ship was a masterpiece of Imperial engineering. Each crew was trained to perfection. Together, they carried enough firepower to crack a planet in half. Against them stood one damaged ship with 200 people aboard. Should have felt confident. She should have felt bored. This should have been the easiest victory of her career. Instead, she felt something she had not experienced in a very long time. She felt uncertain. She had watched the recordings from station. She had seen what the human ship could do. She had studied the movement patterns, the weapon signatures, the impossible speed. Her analysts told her it should not be possible. Physics did not allow it. But there it was, floating in space ahead of her fleet, the Defiant, small and battered and completely surrounded. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "the human vessel is hailing us." Raised an eyebrow, "Put them through." A human face appeared on her screen. Captain looked calm, almost peaceful. Behind him could see his bridge crew working at their stations. "Admiral," said politely, "I assume you are here to destroy us." "I am here to eliminate a threat to the Empire," replied. "We are not a threat. We are refugees. We are running from death, not toward it." Shook her head. "That is not my decision to make. I have my orders." "Orders can be wrong," said. "Leaders can be wrong. You have seen what our ship can do. You know this battle will not be as easy as your superiors believe." "One ship against 500, allowed herself a small smile. "Even with your impressive technology, the math is against you." "Perhaps," agreed. "But I wonder how many of your ships will survive the attempt. I wonder how many of your soldiers will die today for no reason. Is that a price you are willing to pay?" Considered his words. She was not a cruel woman. She did not enjoy killing. But she was a soldier, and soldiers followed orders. "I am sorry," she said, and she meant it. "Prepare for battle." The screen went dark. Aboard the Defiant, Captain turned to his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his words. These were the last survivors of humanity. Scientists and engineers, doctors and pilots, families with children sleeping in the lower decks. They had trusted him to keep them alive. "You all know what we are facing," said. 500 warships, thousands of weapons pointed at us. By every logical measure, we should not survive the next hour. He paused, looking at each face in turn. "But logic has never stopped us before. When the plague came, logic said we would die. We did not. When the black hole appeared, logic said we had no chance. We found one anyway. We are human. We do not accept the impossible. We overcome it." Lieutenant smiled grimly at her tactical console. Navigator cracked his knuckles and stretched his fingers. Engineer was already calculating power distributions in his head. "Today we fight," continued. "Not for conquest, not for glory. We fight for the children sleeping below. We fight for the future we have not yet built. We fight because that is what humans do." He sat down in his captain's chair. "All stations ready. Let us show them what we are made of." The Imperial fleet opened fire. 500 ships released their weapons at once. Plasma beams and missiles and energy torpedoes filled the space around the Defiant like a storm of light and death. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. Nothing could survive such an attack. The Defiant survived. Its shields blazed with impossible brightness, absorbing energy that should have vaporized the ship. The hull shuddered and groaned. Warning lights flashed across every console, but the ship held together. And then it moved. His hands danced across his controls. The Defiant twisted and spun through the enemy fleet, moving in patterns that the Imperial targeting computers could not predict. It was not just fast. It was unpredictable. It moved like a living thing, dodging and weaving between the massive warships. Began firing. She did not aim at reactors or life support systems. She aimed at engines and weapons. Her shots were precise, surgical, perfect. Each blast disabled something important without killing anyone. One Imperial cruiser lost its main engines. Another watched its weapons go dark. A third found itself spinning out of control as its navigation systems failed. The battle became chaos. Admiral shouted orders, trying to coordinate her fleet, but her ships kept getting in each other's way. They were too big, too slow, too dependent on formation tactics that did not work against an enemy like this. The Defiant slipped between two battleships and disabled both of them before they could react. It dove under a carrier and took out its launch bays. It danced around a destroyer and left it drifting helplessly in space. 3 hours passed. 200 Imperial ships were disabled. Their crews were alive but confused, watching their instruments fail and their weapons die. The remaining 300 ships had pulled back, trying to regroup. The Defiant floated in the center of the battlefield, damaged but intact. Smoke poured from several sections of its hull. Its shields were nearly gone. Half its weapons were overheated. But it was still there. Admiral stared at her tactical display with disbelief. She had lost 200 ships. She had not killed a single human. Her fleet, the pride of the Empire, had been humiliated by one small vessel. "Admiral," her first officer said quietly, "what are your orders?" Closed her eyes. She thought about her career. She thought about her honor. She thought about the thousands of soldiers under her command who would die if she continued this battle. Then she thought about what she had just witnessed. A species that fought without cruelty. A species that won without killing. A species that faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. "All ships retreat," she ordered. "Fall back to the secondary position." Her officers looked at her in shock. No one questioned her. They were too relieved. Aboard the Defiant, the crew watched the Imperial fleet withdraw. For a long moment, no one spoke. They were too exhausted, too amazed, too grateful to be alive. Then Engineer laughed. It was a tired laugh, almost hysterical. "We did it," he said. "We actually did it." Captain leaned back in his chair. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding, but he allowed himself a small smile. "Yes," he said quietly, "we did." Far away, in the Imperial Palace Empress watched the battle recordings with ancient, calculating eyes. She had ruled the galaxy for 600 years. She had seen species rise and fall. She had ordered extinctions without hesitation. But she had never seen anything like this. "Bring me the human captain," she commanded. "I wish to speak with him personally." Her servants bowed and hurried to obey. The Empress had questions, and she intended to get answers. The Imperial Palace was the most magnificent building in the galaxy. It covered an entire mountain, its towers reaching toward the sky like fingers grasping at the stars. 1,000,000 servants worked within its walls. 1,000 guards protected its gates. Every surface was covered in precious metals and rare gems. Captain walked through its halls alone. His crew had begged him not to go. Lieutenant had argued for hours, insisting that she should accompany him. Doctor had warned him that this could be a trap. They were all right to worry. But understood something important. The Empress had invited him personally. This was not a military threat. This was a test, and tests had to be faced alone. Imperial guards lined every corridor, watching him pass with suspicious eyes. Their weapons could kill him in an instant. He ignored them. Fear was a luxury he could not afford. Finally, he reached the Empress's private audience chamber. The room was smaller than he expected, simple almost. A few chairs, a window overlooking a garden, 2 cups of tea on a small table. And sitting in one of the chairs, waiting for him, was Empress. She was not what had imagined. He had expected someone fierce, intimidating, surrounded by guards and advisors. Instead, he found an old woman sitting quietly, her hands folded in her lap. But her eyes were something else entirely. They were ancient and deep, filled with 6 centuries of wisdom and cruelty. Looking into them was like staring into a black hole. "Please sit," she said, gesturing to the empty chair. "Sat." "Tea," she offered. "Thank you." She poured him a cup with her own hands. No servants, no ceremony, just 2 beings sharing a drink. "You are not what I expected," said, studying him carefully. "Neither are you," replied. She smiled slightly. "I have killed billions of beings. I have destroyed civilizations that displeased me. I have ruled this galaxy with absolute power for 600 years. Does that not frighten you?" Considered the question honestly. It should, but I have watched my world die. I have buried friends and family. I have faced death so many times that it has become familiar. There is very little left that can frighten me. "Interesting," murmured. "Most beings who sit in that chair tremble. They beg. They offer me anything I want in exchange for their lives." "Would begging help?" "No." "Then I will not waste my energy." Laughed softly. It was a strange sound, rusty from disuse. Her servants would have been shocked to hear it. "Tell me about your people," she said. "Tell me how you survived." So told her. He told her about the quarantine, 300 years ago, when the Empire sealed their sector and left them to die. He told her about the plague that killed 90% of humanity in the first decade. He told her about the survivors who refused to give up, who built underground cities and developed medicines, and slowly rebuilt their civilization. He told her about the generations of struggle, the food shortages, the equipment failures, the constant fight against a hostile environment. He told her about the scientists who worked without proper tools, the engineers who invented new technologies from scraps, the teachers who made sure every child learned to read and think and dream. He told her about the black hole, the panic, the desperate race to build ships and escape before their sun collapsed. He told her about the hundreds of vessels that launched, full of hope and fear, knowing that most would not survive. He told her about the 18 months of running, the ship malfunctions, the dwindling supplies, the friends who died along the way. He told her about arriving in Imperial space with 200 people, the last remnants of a species that should have been extinct. Through it all, listened in silence. Her ancient eyes never left his face. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "I have heard many stories in my long life," she finally said. "Stories of conquest and betrayal, stories of ambition and greed, but I have never heard a story quite like yours." "We are just trying to survive," said simply. "No," shook her head. "It is more than that. Any species can survive through luck or adaptation. What you describe is something different, something I do not fully understand." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Your ship was surrounded by 500 warships. You were outnumbered, facing certain death. Any rational species would have surrendered. Any logical commander would have accepted defeat." "We do not surrender," said. "Why not?" The question hung in the air. Thought about it carefully before answering. "Because giving up was never an option for us," he said slowly. "When the plague came, we did not give up. When resources ran out, we did not give up. When the universe itself tried to destroy us, we did not give up. It is not in our nature. It is not how we are built." "But why?" pressed. "What drives you? What makes you continue when all hope is lost?" looked out the window at the alien garden below. He thought about his crew waiting for him back on the Defiant. He thought about the children sleeping in the lower decks, dreaming of a home they had never known. Hope is never lost, he said quietly. It can be small, it can be hidden, it can be nothing more than a tiny spark in an ocean of darkness, but as long as one human remains alive, hope exists, because we carry it with us. We pass it to our children. We refuse to let it die. Was silent for a long time after that. Finally, she stood and walked to the window. Her back was to, but he could see her reflection in the glass. She looked tired, old, almost fragile. I have ruled this empire for 6 centuries, she said softly. I have seen countless species rise and fall. I have watched civilizations bloom and wither, and in all that time I have never encountered a species like yours. She turned to face him. You are either the most dangerous beings I have ever met, she said, or the most valuable allies I could ever hope to find. We do not wish to be dangerous, replied. We only wish to live. And that is precisely what makes you dangerous, said. A species that cannot be intimidated, a species that will not surrender, a species that carries hope like a weapon. She walked back to her chair and sat down heavily. The empire has grown stagnant, she admitted. We have ruled for so long that we have forgotten why we wanted to rule. We have become comfortable, lazy. We crush threats because we fear change, not because we seek improvement. She looked at with something almost like respect. Perhaps what we need is not another conquered species. Perhaps what we need is a partner, an equal, someone who can remind us what it means to struggle, what it means to survive. Felt his heart beating faster, but he kept his face calm. What are you proposing? Empress smiled. It was not a warm smile, but it was not cruel either. It was the smile of someone making a decision that would change the galaxy. I am proposing something that has never happened in 12,000 years of imperial history, she said. I am proposing peace. 6 months had passed since the battle at 6 months since a single human warship had stood against an empire and refused to break. 6 months since Empress had offered something no other species had ever received. A home. The planet was called New Sol now. It was not the most beautiful world in the galaxy. The sky was often gray. The soil was rocky and difficult. Storms swept across its surface every few weeks, forcing everyone to take shelter. But it was theirs. Captain, who was no longer a captain, stood on a hill overlooking the first human settlement. Small buildings dotted the landscape below. Roads were being carved through the wilderness. Fields were being prepared for crops that had traveled across the galaxy as seeds in careful storage. 200 people had grown to 203. 3 Bobbies had been born since they landed. The first humans to be born on a world that was truly their own. Behind, footsteps approached. He did not need to turn around to know who it was. The Galactic Senate session starts in 2 hours, Lieutenant said, stopping beside him. She was captain now, commander of the Defiant, though the ship spent most of its time grounded these days. Are you ready? Smiled slightly. Is anyone ever ready for politics? You handled the Empress well enough. The Empress was trying to understand us. The Senate is trying to figure out how to use us. That is much more complicated. Nodded, she understood. They all understood. Peace with the Empire did not mean trust. It meant careful navigation through a galaxy full of species who feared what they did not know. The children are asking about you, said. They want to know when Ambassador will come tell them stories again. Laughed softly. Ambassador, I still cannot get used to that title. You earned it. You are the reason we have this world. The reason those children have a future. We all earned it, corrected her. Every person who survived the journey, every person who refused to give up. This is not my victory. This belongs to all of us. Was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, do you think we will be safe here, truly safe? Looked up at the gray sky. Somewhere beyond those clouds, beyond the atmosphere, the galaxy continued its ancient dance. Empires rose and fell. Species competed for power. The universe remained as dangerous as ever. "No," he admitted, "we will never be completely safe, but we will be ready. We will watch. We will learn. We will grow stronger." He turned to look at her. "And if anyone threatens our home again, we will face them the same way we faced the Imperial fleet." Smiled grimly, "Together. Always." Far away, in the great hall of the Galactic Senate, 1,000 species watched as the human delegation took their seats for the first time. Walked at the front, wearing a simple suit that looked plain compared to the elaborate robes around him. The Senate chamber was enormous. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy sat in floating platforms arranged in a vast circle. At the center, a podium allowed speakers to address the entire assembly. Whispers filled the air as the humans entered. Some species looked at them with curiosity, others with fear, a few with barely hidden hostility. Ignored them all. He took his seat and waited. The Senate session would cover many topics today: trade agreements, border disputes, resource allocations. Humanity's place in all of this was still being determined. Across the chamber, he noticed a familiar face. Commander, now wearing the badge of a diplomatic liaison, nodded to him from her platform. She had been promoted after refusing to fire on unarmed humans during the crisis. Her career had nearly ended because of that choice. Instead, it had taken a completely new direction. Beside her sat Admiral, the woman who had led 500 ships against the Defiant, the woman who had ordered the retreat that saved both fleets. She had requested a meeting with last month. She wanted to learn human military philosophy, the idea that victory did not require annihilation, that strength could be shown through mercy. Had agreed to teach her. It was a small step toward understanding. Small steps were how great journeys began. On New Sol, Doctor knelt in the dirt of the settlement's first garden. His old hands carefully planted seeds from Earth's last seed bank. Tomatoes, carrots, wheat, plants that had traveled across the galaxy, sleeping in frozen storage, waiting for this moment. "Will they grow here?" a young girl asked, watching him work. She was 5 years old, born on the Defiant during the long journey. She had never seen a garden before. "We will find out," replied gently. "The soil is different, the sunlight is different, but plants are adaptable like humans. They find ways to survive." "What if they do not grow?" Smiled at her. "Then we try again and again and again until they do." The girl thought about this. Then she knelt beside him and began helping, her small fingers pushing seeds into the unfamiliar earth. In the Senate chamber, a speaker was droning on about trade tariffs. Listened politely, learning the rhythms of galactic politics. It was boring, complicated work, but it was necessary work. This was how peace was maintained, not through dramatic battles, but through endless negotiation and compromise. When the session finally ended, approached him. "Your first Senate meeting," she said. "How did it feel?" Long admitted. Laughed, "It gets worse. Wait until the budget debates." They walked together through the halls of the Senate building. Other delegates moved around them, many stopping to stare at the human, had grown used to the attention. "I have been meaning to ask you something," said. "During the battle, when you faced 500 ships, were you afraid?" Considered the question. "Yes, every moment. I was terrified that we would fail, that my people would die, that everything we had survived would mean nothing." "But you did not show it." "Fear is natural. Showing fear to your enemies is a choice. I chose not to." Nodded slowly. "I am starting to understand you, your people. It took me a while, but I think I finally see what makes you different." "What is that?" "You feel everything we feel, fear, pain, despair, but you do not let those feelings control you. You acknowledge them and then you keep moving forward anyway." She paused. "That is not courage, it is something else, something I do not have a word for." In our language, we call it stubborn, said with a small smile. Laughed again. Stubborn, yes, that fits. On New Sol, as the sun set behind the gray clouds, the settlers gathered for their evening meal. It was a simple affair. Protein packs and vitamin supplements. But they ate together, sharing stories and jokes, acting like the community they were slowly becoming. Captain stood at the edge of the gathering, watching her people. These were the ones who had survived everything. The plague, the black hole, the long journey, the battle. They had earned this moment of peace. Somewhere in the crowd, children were laughing. The sound echoed across the settlement, mixing with the alien wind. Thought about the future, about the challenges that still lay ahead. The galaxy was vast and dangerous. The Empire was watching them. Other species were uncertain about these strange newcomers who had appeared from nowhere and changed everything. But the children were laughing. That meant hope. That meant tomorrow. And for humans, tomorrow was always worth fighting for. Across the galaxy, Empress sat alone in her private chamber, reviewing reports about the human settlement, growth projections, resource analyses, diplomatic assessments. Her advisors were divided on whether accepting humanity into the Empire had been wise. Knew it was too early to tell. The humans might prove to be exactly what the Empire needed, a spark of energy in a civilization that had grown too comfortable, a reminder that strength came in many forms. Or they might become a threat, a species that could not be controlled, a force that would eventually challenge everything the Empire stood for. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. Looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there, on a small rocky world with gray skis and difficult soil, 200 humans were building a future. She found herself hoping they would succeed. It was a strange feeling for an empress who had destroyed civilizations without hesitation. But the humans had taught her something in their brief time in her galaxy, something she had forgotten long ago. Hope was contagious. And once it started spreading, nothing in the universe could stop it.